none of our characters are actually carrying themselves around. But when you hear people talk about the baggage that people carry, that's figurative baggage, right? Kind of issues that they've had in their past. Which character do you feel like is carrying around a lot of or a heavy load? Here we go. Sweat collected in the creases of my elbows, in the soft places behind my knees. Lying on top of the sheets, I touched my eyelids. I'd cried so much they were puffed out and half shut. If it hadn't been for my eyelids, I might not have believed any of the things that had passed between me and August. I hadn't moved since August left, only lay there, staring at the flat surface of the wall, at the array of night bugs that wander out and crawl around for fun after they think you're asleep. Array would be a good word to choose for a vocab word. What does it mean? When I grew tired of watching them, I placed my arm across my eyes and told myself, "Sleep, Lily. Please, just go to sleep." But of course, I couldn't. I sat up, feeling like my body weighed 200 pounds, like somebody had backed the cement truck up to the honey house, swung the pipe over to my chest, and started pouring. I hated feeling like a concrete block in the middle of the night. More than once, while staring at the wall, I'd thought of Our Lady. I wanted to talk to her, to say, "Where do I go from here?" But when I'd seen her earlier, when August and I had first come in, she didn't look like she could be of service to anybody, bound up with all that chain around her. You want the one you're praying to at least look capable. Remember, why is Mary chained up in the honey house? It's part of their Mary Day celebration, right? So we're still having that. This has been a long day for Lily. So right now, Our Lady is chained in the honey house with Lily. I dragged myself out of bed and went to see her anyway. I decided that even Mary did not need to be 100% capable all the time. The only thing I wanted was for her to understand. Somebody to let out a big sigh and say, "You poor thing, I know how you feel." Given a choice, I preferred someone to understand my situation, even though she was helpless to fix it, rather than the other way around. But that's just me. Right off, I smelled the chain, its thick, rusty odor. I had the urge to unwrap her, but of course that would have ruined the entire reenactment August and the daughters had going. The red candle flickered at Mary's feet. I plopped onto the floor and sat cross-legged in front of her. Outside, I heard wind high in the trees, a sing-song voice that carried me back to long ago times when I would wake in the night to the same sound, and, muddled with sleep and wanting, would imagine it was my mother out there among the trees, singing her bottomless love. Once I flew into T. Ray's room, yelling she was outside my window. He said 3 words. "Holy crap, Lily!" I hated when he was right. There had never been any voice in the wind. No mother out there singing, no bottomless love. The terrible thing, the really terrible thing, was the anger in me. It had started on the back porch when the story of my mother had collapsed, like the ground under my feet giving way. I didn't want to be angry. I told myself, "You're not angry. You don't have any right to be angry. What you did to your mother is a lot worse than what she did to you." But you can't talk yourself out of anger. Either you are angry or you're not. The room was hot and still. In another minute I would not be able to breathe for the anger filling me up. My lungs went out only so far before they struck against it and closed back in. I got to my feet and paced in the darkness. Behind me on the work table, a half-dozen jars of black Madonna honey waited for Zach to deliver them somewhere in town. To Clayton's, maybe, to the Frogmore Stew General Store, the Amen Dollar, or Divine Dews, the colored beauty parlor. How dare she? How dare she leave me? I was her child. I looked toward the window, wanting to smash the panes out of it. I wanted to throw something all the way to heaven and knock God clean off his throne. I picked up one of the honey jars and hurled it as hard as I could. It missed Black Mary's head by inches and smashed against the back wall. I picked up another one and threw it, too. It crashed on the floor beside a stack of supers. I threw every last jar on the table until honey was spattered everywhere, flung like cake batter from electric beaters. Isn't that awesome imagery? Who hasn't done that, right? Mixing up batter or bread or something with the beater, and all of a sudden you lift it up just a little too soon. It goes flying everywhere, right? I stood in a gooey room full of broken glass, and I didn't care. My mother had left me. Who cared about honey on the walls? Think about that, though. How sticky is honey? Now picture it all around the walls with broken glass. Somebody's going to have to pick that up, and that's not going to be very fun, is it? I grabbed a tin bucket next, and letting out a grunt, threw it with so much force it left a dent in the wall. My throwing arm was nearly worn out, but I picked up the tray of candle molds and flung that too. Then I stood still, watching the honey slide along the wall toward the floor. A trickle of bright blood wound down my left arm. I had no idea how it had gotten there. My heart beat wildly. I felt like I'd unzipped my skin and momentarily stepped out of it, leaving a crazy person in charge. The room turned like a carousel, with my stomach gliding up and down. I felt a need to touch the wall with both hands to make it still again. I walked back toward the table where the honey jars had been and braced my hands against it. I couldn't think what to do. I felt a powerful sadness, not because of what I'd done, as bad as that was, but because everything seemed emptied out. The feelings I'd had for her, the things I'd believed, all those stories about her I'd lived off of like they were food and water and air, because I was the girl she'd left behind. That's what it came down to. Looking around at the wreck I'd made, I wondered if someone in the pink house might have heard the honey jars hit the wall. I went to the window and stared across the gloom in the yard. The panes in August's bedroom window were dark. I felt my heart in my chest. It hurt so badly, like it had been stepped on. "How come you left me?" I whispered, watching my breath make a circle of fog on the glass. I stayed pressed against the window for a while, then went and cleared off a few pieces of glass from the floor in front of Our Lady. I lay down on my side, drawing my knees toward my chin. Above me, Black Mary was flecked with honey and seemed not at all surprised. I lay in the emptiness, in the tiredness, with everything, even the hating, drained out. There was nothing left to do, no place to go, just right here, right now, where the truth was. I told myself not to get up in the night and walk across the floor unless I wanted to cut my feet into smithereens. Then I closed my eyes and began to piece together the dream I wanted myself to have. How a little door in the Black Mary statue would open up just over her abdomen, and I would crawl inside to a hidden room. This was not all my imagination, as I had glimpsed an actual picture of this in August's book. A statue of Mary with a wide open door, and inside all these people tucked away in the secret world of consolation. I woke to Rosalind's big hands shaking me and opened my eyes to a terrible brightness. Her face was bent over mine, the scent of coffee and grape jelly coming from her mouth. "Lily!" she yelled. "What in the Sam Hill happened in here?" I'd forgotten there would be dried blood caked across my arm. I looked at it, at a piece of glass, small as a stub of diamond burrowed in a puckering setting of skin. Around me, jagged pieces of jars and puddles of honey, blood dotted the floor. Rosalind stared at me, waiting, bewildered looking. I sat back, trying to make her face come into focus. Sunlight slanted across Our Lady and fell down around us. Bewildered would be another good vocab word. "Answer me," Rosalind said. I squinted in the light. My mouth couldn't seem to open up and speak. "Look at you! You've been bleeding!" My head nodded, bobbed around on my neck. I looked at the wrecked room. I felt embarrassed. Ridiculous. Stupid. I threw some jars of honey. "You made this mess?" she said, like she couldn't quite believe it. Like what she'd expected me to say was that a roving band of housewreckers had come through during the night. She blew a puff of air over her face, so forceful it lifted her hair, which was not easy to do considering the amount of lacquer she kept smeared on it. Lord God in heaven, she said. I got to my feet, waiting for her to bawl me out, but she took her thick fingers and struggled to pluck the piece of glass from my arm. You need some mercurochrome on this before you get infected, she told me. Come on. She sounded exasperated, like she wanted to take me by the shoulders and shake me till my teeth fell out. I sat on the side of the tub while Rosalind dabbed my arm with a stinging icy swab. She plastered a Band-Aid across it and said, There, you won't die from blood poisoning at least. She closed the medicine cabinet over the sink, then shut the bathroom door. I watched her take a seat on the commode, how her belly dropped down between her legs. Anyone know what a commode is? It's another word for toilet. When Rosalind sat on a toilet, the whole thing disappeared under her. I perched on the side of the tub and thought how glad I was August and June were still in their rooms. All right, she said. Why'd you throw all that honey? I looked at the row of seashells on the window ledge, knowing how truly they belonged here, even though we were 100 miles from the ocean. August had said everybody needed a seashell in her bathroom to remind her the ocean was her home. Seashells, she'd said, are Our Lady's favorite items, next to the moon. I went over and picked up one of the shells, a pretty white one, flat with yellow around the edges. Rosalind sat there watching me. Any time now, she said. T-Ray was right about my mother, I said, hearing myself say the words, feeling sickened by them. She left me. It was just like he said it was. She left me. For a second, the anger I'd felt the night before flared up, and it crossed my mind to slam the shell against the tub, but I took a breath instead. Throwing fits wasn't that satisfying, I'd found out. Rosalind shifted her weight and the toilet lid squeaked and slid around on top of the seat. She raked her fingers over the top of her head. I looked away, at the pipe under the sink, at a smudge of rust on the linoleum. So your mother did leave after all, she said. Lord, I was afraid of that. I lifted my head. I remembered that first night after we ran away down by the creek when I'd told Rosalind what T-Ray had said. I'd wanted her to laugh at the very idea of my mother leaving me, but she'd hesitated. You already knew, didn't you? I said. I didn't know for sure, she said. I just heard things. What things? She let out a sigh, really something more than a sigh. After your mama died, she said, I heard T-Ray on the phone talking to that neighbor lady, Mrs. Watson. He was telling her that he didn't need her to watch after you, that he'd gotten one of the pickers out of the orchard. He was talking about me, so I listened. Outside the window a crow flew past, filling the bathroom with a frantic caw, caw, and Rosalind stopped, waiting for it to die down. I knew Mrs. Watson from church, from all the times she stopped to buy peaches from me. She was kind as she could be, but she'd always looked at me like there was something indescribably sad written across my forehead, like she wanted to come over and scrub it off. I clutched the side of the tub as Rosalind went on, not sure I wanted her to. I heard your daddy tell Mrs. Watson, Janie, you've done more than your share looking after Lily these past months. I don't know what we would have done without you. Rosalind looked at me and shook her head. I always wondered what he meant by that. When you told me what T-Ray said about your mother leaving you, I guess I knew then. I can't believe you didn't tell me, I said, and folded my arms across my chest. So how did you find out? Rosalind asked. August told me, I said. I thought of all that crying I'd done in her bedroom, holding fistfuls of her dress in my hand, the monogram on her handkerchief scratchy against my cheek. August? Rosalind repeated. You don't see Rosalind looking dumbfounded that often, but that's the look she had now. She knew my mother back when she was